Today, I'm going to be telling you about Frank, a startup that JPMorgan acquired for $175 million in 2021. And today, as I record this, Frank's founder, Charlie Javice, is awaiting trial on federal charges of securities fraud, wire fraud, bank fraud, and conspiracy. Now, let's get into the ethics of what went wrong and what went right. This quote from a podcast I was listening to concisely captures the company's business model. The idea was that Frank's platform provided a service to streamline the famously complex FAFSA and then would capture value from these customers or students by charging fees for more challenging associated tasks like appealing a financial aid decision. Analyzing the ethics of Frank. The company's ethical behavior fails the test when examined under both the deontological and utilitarian lenses. On the screen, you'll find the smoking gun, so to speak, from the Southern District of New York's sealed complaint. This unethical behavior was both brazen and highly sophisticated. For instance, the company's website included a glowing review from a made-up school official at a made-up university. A later internal investigation from JPMorgan would reveal that Javice had emailed a data science professor and ultimately paid this individual $18,000 to make up a bunch of fake users because she had told JPMorgan that Frank had over 4 million. Deontologically, this behavior conflicts with universalizability. One could very easily create a maxim. When striking a business deal, do not induce your future partner with deliberately false information. As for reversibility, had Javice been on the other side of the negotiating table, working for JPMorgan, it is immediately apparent that she would not have wanted Frank to treat her in this fashion. As for the utilitarian framework, Frank's behavior maximizes the good, in this case, a financial benefit, not for the greatest number, but rather the smallest, only Javice, and most certainly not JPMorgan or its customers. How tone at the top and compliance factored in. This scandal is a startling example of failures in terms of tone at the top and compliance. JPMorgan's investigation revealed an email in which a Frank engineer had asked Javice about the company's, quote, data manipulation request, to which she had effectively said, "Don't worry, no one's going to end up in an orange jumpsuit." There's a significant gravity to this tone from the company's top leader. It fostered a culture that not only co-signed unethical behavior, but as the courts are currently determining, potentially criminal. This anecdote also speaks to major compliance concerns. This email was only uncovered by JPMorgan after the acquisition. What sort of corporate governance guardrails did Frank have in place? Why wasn't this engineer empowered to report this issue to HR in real time? Now let's discuss how the ethical issues were handled. The utilitarian observer would commend how JPMorgan dealt with the ethical issues after the scandal had been uncovered. The bank had originally acquired Frank for $175 million in the hopes that the startup's over 4 million users would become longtime JPMorgan customers. When the marketing team sent an email to 400,000 users and got just 103 click-throughs, the alarm bells sounded and JPMorgan put an internal investigation into motion. This investigation led to Javice's firing. And shortly thereafter, on a quarterly earnings call, CEO Jamie Dimon described the deal as a, quote, huge mistake. As a Wall Street Journal reporter put it, that's an embarrassing admission for such a large bank to make. That candor helped bring more publicity to the scandal and could help dissuade future fraudsters from attempting similar schemes. That same week, JPMorgan also shut down the Frank website. That's a win for utilitarians as it leads to the greatest good for the greatest number. In this case, students who could have otherwise been conned. And it's also a win for the deontologists, as every individual has a basic right not to be defrauded by a corporation. What's more, JPMorgan prioritized this action over its own immediate financial considerations, as its original $175 million investment had not been recouped. There are two major ethical and compliance takeaways that the broader tech community can learn from this scandal. First is the concept of responsible innovation, or innovating while minimizing environmental and human rights impacts. Specifically, companies like JPMorgan are going to have to increasingly invest in data science and AI experts to build corporate governance structures so that these companies don't fall prey to fraud schemes powered by sophisticated technology as we see in the case of Frank, or lead these kinds of irresponsible innovations themselves. Second, there is the reminder that existing compliance systems need to be continuously and rigorously monitored and updated. How this $175 million, quote, huge mistake ever even came to be is a fair question. There were publicly available data points that could have easily tipped off the bank before the deal was ever brought together. Back in 2017, Javice penned an opinion piece for the New York Times with the headline, "The 8 Most Confusing Things About FAFSA." The piece was so error-riddled that an 8-sentence correction had to be issued by the paper. The 9th most confusing thing might be why the bank ever trusted Javice in the first place. Thanks.